Welcome back to the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Hope everybody's had a good week as the NBA is coming to its All-Star weekend. So we have plenty of stuff to talk about the All-Stars and the festivities. But first, we're going to kick off with something that happened right before the All-Star weekend, which is my beloved Boston Celtics announcing their 19th head coach in franchise history. Joe Mazzulla gets the interim tag removed, and he is the guy going forward. He also signed a contract extension. They didn't give details of the full contract, but Ime Udoka is now no longer with the team in any capacity, and Mazzulla gets that tag again removed from him and is the guy going forward. So the question, Sap, is what do you think of the timing? One, and two, was this the right decision?
Well, it's almost like, is this the chicken or the egg, right? Like, it makes sense to give him the job. Like, let's get that tag off the interim head coach of the Boston Celtics, get it out of the way, because now it feels like he's in charge. And again, NBA coaches are in charge only so much, especially a 34-year-old head coach who has no head coaching experience in the NBA before this year. But he does have a good relationship with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. That's the most important thing. The team has the best record in the league. There's been some questionable decisions by Mazzulla, his lack of use of timeouts. I think he plays Tatum a little bit too much in blowouts. I think you got to watch his minutes going forward. But overall, I think he's done a decent job. So I think they just wanted to get this out of the way. He's going to the All-Star game as the coach of Team Giannis. We don't even know if Giannis is going to play on Team Giannis, but Mazzulla is going to be the head coach. And I think they just kind of wanted to get that out of the way so that he's going to be presented as the current coach of the Boston Celtics. I don't think they would introduce him as interim head coach of the Boston Celtics if this tag had remained. I don't think they'd go that far with that on the weekend. So I think they probably didn't commit too long to Mazzulla, maybe 2-3 years at the most. I don't think they gave him a 5-year contract. We don't know. We're just speculating. So if it's 2 or 3 years at $4 million a year, it's not a huge financial commitment that if this doesn't work well down the stretch and into the postseason and they think it's time to turn things over to another coach in a year or two, it's not a big financial outlay. So those are things that you have to look at. But I think this makes sense because now it just feels like, yeah, he's in charge as much as an NBA coach can be in charge, and it makes sense.
I think a lot of people from the outside looking in were saying, why is this taking so long? What's going on? Why do they have the best record in the league and things seem pretty stable over there, and yet they're still keeping the interim tag over him? So maybe he was feeling a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe the players were feeling a little bit uncomfortable with the uncertainty, and maybe the Celtics organization, my guess, is just wanted to get rid of any sort of uncertainty about the situation. So I can understand it from that standpoint. A lot of conspiracy theorists that I heard, on the radio and stuff like that are saying that, they're worried about a player wooing Joe Mazzulla away from the Celtics because, he's the interim tag. I don't think that was a real concern of the team at all. I think, they're trying to reward him for what they feel like is doing a pretty good job. Again, I don't think he's done an outstanding job. They do have the best record in the league, but at the same time, they were expected to be right in this position. So I don't think that he's done anything to elevate them. I don't know that he's, lost games for them, but he has, like you said, Seth, had some questionable decisions at the end. And the real test for a head coach, as we all know in the NBA, is the playoffs. In the regular season, you're going to have ups and downs. It's just the sort of nature of a long season. But in the playoffs is where, coaching sort of shines if you're going to be considered a good coach or not. And that's where it comes up because you have to make game-to-game adjustments against the same team, and it becomes much more of a chess match. And we have no idea what Joe Mazzulla will look like in that scenario. So I kind of thought the Celtics were going to keep that tag on him throughout the playoffs to sort of evaluate how he does in the postseason. And I thought that they were, would be within their rights to do that because of the hiring process had to happen so quickly because the whole Udoka situation was so sort of sudden and unprecedented right before the season that they didn't really have time to evaluate candidates. They had to just go with somebody in-house as quickly as possible. And so I thought that was maybe what they were going to do, was wait to the postseason, sort of evaluate and go from there. But I have no problem with them taking the interim tag off. I don't think it's a big deal one way or the other. If it creates more good vibes and comfortability and more certainty amongst the team, then I think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, more clarity. And again, it's about the financial outlay. And again, we don't know how long this contract is and for how much. But let's just say it's 3 years, $4 million a year. That's a $12 million outlay. Look, if they get upset in the first round, do they say, well, we're going to have to make a coaching change because this guy's just not ready for prime time? He was outcoached by Eric Spoelstra in the first round by the Miami Heat, and the Heat aren't as good as the Celtics, but Spoelstra is the best coach in the league, and Mazzulla was exposed, right? So that's the worst case scenario. But I mean, if he gets back to the finals and loses in 7 games to whoever, obviously they're going to keep him on board for next year.
Right.
Although, we've seen in this city where they've moved on from managers, right? I mean, Grady Little got to the American League Championship Series Game 7 and he got fired, and they brought in Terry Francona. And the reports were, even if the Red Sox had won the World Series in 2003, they were going to move on from Grady Little. So, you could see that happen. I think that it just adds some clarity. And again, I think this is tied to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. If they're on board with Joe Mazzulla, maybe they went to management and said, we'd like to see Joe as our coach, not as our interim coach, and we're going to go forward. I think there's been some immaturity with Mazzulla. He's only 34 years old. Heck, I think he's younger than you, Jet. I don't know exactly what his birthday is, but he's essentially your age, and you're a young guy. I mean, I'm a lot older than you, right? That's kind of the vibe of the show. But as some of the way he's dealt with the media has been a little bit weird.
I agree.
Like,
yeah,
he's extremely abrasive, combative. When he's asked a question by
bit
whether it's Gary
sensitive.
Washburn, very sensitive. And look, this is new for him, but this is also a high-profile job. It's not like he's coaching the Oklahoma City Thunder, where there's not a lot of attention paid to him. He's coaching the Boston Celtics, who remain the favorite to win the NBA championship. So there's pressure
Yeah.
there. If he goes back to the finals and loses, they're going to look and say, well, he's failed. I mean, I'm not a huge Celtics fan. You know that. You are. But I think it's championship or bust. If they don't win the championship this year, it's a failure. They're the best team in basketball. They're the best record. They got to the finals last year. They added Malcolm Brogdon, who's been a home run so far this year. In theory, you hope that, Rob Williams is healthier than he was last year in the postseason, and Tatum and Brown more experienced in those big games. They should win the championship. I think they're the favorite.
Yep.
So again, he can only fail more than succeed with this because of what he was given, taking over a really sensational team. But I think the way he handles the media, he's got to chill a little bit. And again, we see him on the sideline, very intense guy. I think he's going to pull a jaw muscle chewing gum. And I'm a gum chewer, but he takes it to another level. He's so intense. I think at times, I don't know if that's going to wear off on players because they still have their issues late in game. Not necessarily closing games that they should, or some close games that they've lost that they probably should have won. Maybe that's just him not being in control or experienced enough, and it kind of weighs in on the players. He doesn't call a lot of timeouts. We know Phil Jackson used to do that, but heck, Phil Jackson had Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Kobe Bryant, and Shaquille O'Neal. You could get out of the way and let those guys decide. I don't know if Tatum and Brown, I don't think they'll ever get quite to that level, but they're still trying to find their way in these late game situations. So I'd give him like a B so far. We took over the best team in basketball. They have the best record, but there's been some flaws in there. And again, dealing with the media is a big part of your job. I mean, he's snapping at Abby Chin, who's a total professional, or Gary Washburn, or any of the people that cover that team. And I don't think the Celtics media is that probing. I mean, I think they're pretty easygoing with the players and coaches. So how are you snapping at those folks? I mean, imagine if he was coaching where, Philadelphia, wherever they were constantly attacking Doc Rivers, how would he react to that? Now Doc's an experienced coach and Mazzulla's, 34 years old. So he's going to have to kind of clean that up a little bit. Maybe now that he has the contract, he's a little bit more comfortable because
that's what I was thinking. I hope that that's the case, because you're right. He's been very, I've heard him described, tightly wound. And it does seem like that, like you said, defensive. He's, again, he's somebody who played at West Virginia, didn't play, in the NBA, and then coached in Division III, and then has been an assistant coach. So he hasn't really had very much, if any, media experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is new for him too. So he was, again, thrust into this situation that he wasn't ready for. So the media stuff, not everybody's good at it. And I don't think people are expecting him to be, really, really good at it and be, this guy who's, has a great rapport with the media on day one and stuff like that. It's a skill, but he needs to relax a little bit. It
Chill,
is just,
right?
at the end of the day, it is basketball. It's supposed to be fun. And you're
Yeah,
winning,
it's not
so
surgery, right? Yeah, he's
right.
not doing open heart surgery. And again, he played for Bob Huggins in West Virginia, who's an extremely intense guy himself. And that culture at West Virginia is hard nosed, kind of like Michigan State. Like they don't really recruit necessarily 5-star recruits. I mean, Michigan State does from time to time. West Virginia doesn't. They kind of get
Right.
3-star recruits, get them in there. They're a defensive team, hit the floor, and that's kind of how he played while he was there. So he's carrying that over into his coaching. But yeah, he's going to maybe just chill a little bit, and it'll work out better perhaps for his team, because you sometimes, more so in the NBA, you reflect your best player's temperament, but sometimes the coach can rub off on the players. And if he's a little too intense, maybe the team is tightly wound down the stretch. And we've seen some games where I thought they should have won that they lost because they just didn't execute down the stretch. But I think the contract will maybe put him at ease, unless he's just that guy who is never going to be at ease, because he certainly is tightly wound. I mean, we know people like that are very intense, and no matter what the circumstances are, they remain that way.
Yeah, and it's gonna the microscope's only gonna get more intense as they approach the postseason, and then they're playing playoff games and hopefully playing for the championship. Then he's dealing with not just the Boston media but the national media. So that's a different scenario. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But good for him that he got 34 years old to have the best record in the NBA as a coach and being thrust in a difficult situation. Now get that interim tag. I'm sure whether he displays it or not, I'm sure he feels pretty good today, heading into the All-Star weekend about to coach Team Giannis. And that's a pretty awesome thing. This time last year, I don't think that he thought that this was going to be what his life looked like.
He wasn't even a lead assistant, right? He was like, in the second row, and then
Right.
got elevated to this position. And here he is coaching Team Giannis on Sunday. So yeah, it's kind of a meteoric rise for Joe Mazzulla.
So let's talk about Team Giannis a little bit, Sap, as we head into the All-Star weekend. We know the players, though there's been a bunch of replacement players named, and we know that the format is changed slightly. They've been drafting; they haven't been East-West for a few years now, but they're actually going to do a playground-style draft now at the NBA All-Star weekend, right before the game, Sap, where I guess LeBron and Giannis are just going to say, give me that guy, give me that guy, give me that guy. The NBA came out today, was worried about that sort of last pick scenario and embarrassing somebody. So apparently what they're going to do is draft the reserves first and then the starters. I don't know how that solves really anything. It seems kind of silly to me. I think the thing they did on TNT last year, where James Harden ended up being the last pick, was hysterical. And so I kind of were hoping they would replicate that. And it seemed to work well on just, TV, no pressure. The guys aren't standing there waiting to get picked. But this is the way they decided to go. I kind of miss the East versus West, honestly, Sap.
Yeah, in a sense, I mean, I would like to see the U.S. versus the world. I think
Yeah,
that would be
we've talked about that before.
fascinating. I mean, you'd have Luka, you'd have Jokic, Embiid, Giannis, all on one team. Man, I mean, we're talking about 4 of the top 6 players in the world on one team. Then you'd have Tatum, Durant, LeBron, Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving, whoever on Team USA. So I think it would be pretty fascinating. Although actually, Kyrie could play on Team World. He believes the world is flat, but he also, I believe, was born in Australia. So
It was.
he could play for Team World, absolutely. So as could Ben Simmons if he ever qualified for an All-Star
He
game
won't.
again, which
He's
he
done.
won't. No, you've got to attempt at least one shot a game to be an All-Star. But yeah, I think that would be kind of fun. The East versus West was always interesting. LeBron's undefeated
He
as
is.
the GM, right? So he's really good at this stuff. So look, if we're going to offend someone because they're the last pick, I mean, these guys are all making 25, 30, $40 million a year. They got huge sneaker deals. I hope they don't get offended because the last person picked in the All-Star game is a great player. It's the 24th best player in the world. Although with all the injuries, I mean, it has a little bit of a feel like the Pro Bowl, where we're going to look at it and see quarterbacks playing that we didn't even realize were playing in the NFL. So that's going to be a concern, obviously, because we don't even know if Giannis is going to play. The best player in the league may have to sit out the All-Star game because of that wrist injury he suffered last night. So, yeah, the game itself is kind of what it is. The festivities are interesting. I like the three-point contest, especially now that you generally see a lot of really great players in there. You got Dame Lillard, Jason Tatum. I think Tyler Hero is someone that's a rising star. So you've got really good players that are going to be participating in the three-point contest. Not Steph Curry because he's injured, but the dunk contest has become so like ugh, because
Awful.
you just don't have any stars in there. I mean, I'm old enough to remember it was Jordan against Dominique, and Kobe was in a dunk contest, and of course Vince Carter may have been the best of them all. Now we're seeing guys I don't even know who they are. Right? I mean, they're
Except
like G
LeBron
League
ruined
guys.
this. He
He
ruined
did.
it.
Yeah, he's never
I blame him.
participated in it. Yeah. No, I mean, I know a lot of people get on him for that. And I don't know why he wouldn't get in it other than he doesn't want to lose it or he just doesn't think of himself as a dunker. And I don't know if he'd be that great in it because he's so big.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah. In the younger days, when he was probably 20
Oh, he
pounds
would have
lighter,
won. He would have
he
won.
would have. Yeah. I mean, the guy, could pretty much dunk with either hand with a 40-inch vertical and all that power. Yeah. I mean, he actually, you could make a case, would be kind of a combination of Jordan and Dominique, like the power of Dominique and the athleticism of
But
Jordan.
except the youngest star players were always doing the dunk contest. Kobe won it. Tracy McGrady did it. Jordan, obviously, Dominique, you mentioned all of them. And then that line sort of stopped with LeBron. And now we kind of get a bunch of crap in the All-Star in the dunk
Yeah.
contest. Like you said, this year it's Trey Murphy, Kenyon Martin Jr., Jericho Sims, and Mac McClung, who literally just came out of the G League, I think, a week ago. That's your group. The NBA, if they want to keep this going, and I think we said this around the same time last year, Sap, needs to incentivize better players to do it. Whether it's cash, and I think Kia is the presenting sponsor, cash and a nice car. They would do it if they, pony up enough money for the prize. But no one wants to watch, guys they don't know do the dunk contest. They might as well get the professional dunkers to do it. If you're going to go this route where you're picking up guys, no disrespect to any of those guys who are in the dunk contest that, they're trying to make a name for themselves and stuff like that. But it's supposed to be a showcase of, the talent in the NBA is what All-Star Weekend's about. And if you're showing 4 guys who barely play, then you're not really showing out the talent in the NBA.
I thought Mac McClung was a reliever for the Angels. Like, I didn't even know who that was.
Might do both.
He might do it, and the Angels could, use all the pitching help they could find. Yeah, because we don't know these people. Like the dunk contest before, we mentioned Jordan, Kobe, and all those great players. It was must-see TV. I would do away with the dunk contest again, also because the three-point shot is so prevalent in the game that's the highlight of the festivities, right? Because you've seen Steph Curry win it. Last year was an upset. Karl Anthony Towns won it, 7 feet tall. Larry Bird won it. I mean, we've seen so many great players that participated and won that, and we're seeing more of that this year with Tatum and Lillard and Tyrese Halliburton. One of your favorite players is going to be in the three-point contest as well. So that's going to be good. I would do away with the dunk contest. I would just have a game of horse. I know maybe that's kind of lame, but you could get a wide variety of types of players. You just have to outlaw dunks in that because
right.
You're going to have Kevin Durant and Steph Curry playing in that, and Curry's 9 inches shorter. He can't possibly do dunks the way Kevin Durant would, but that would be an incredible skills contest between, say, those 2 players. Bank a shot from 35 feet with your offhand, whatever. There's a million different shots that these guys could have. I mean, Curry would be the favorite to win that thing. The guy can shoot from the locker room. Literally,
right.
I think he can make a shot from there. So I think that would be better. It might be a little bit lame. That when I was growing up, they used to have a one-on-one contest at halftime of NBA games. I mean, they're pre-recorded, and it was actually pretty fascinating. You have like Bob Lanier, a 6'10" center, against JoJo White, a 6'3" guard. Then you would think the 6'10" center would dominate, but the 6'3" guard could also be tough to deal with because he was quicker.
The players are so sensitive now, Sep. They wouldn't be willing to put themselves on that line,
right?
One-on-one thing
To look
on national
foolish, right?
TV.
Yeah,
they wouldn't
to
do
look
it.
foolish. I think LeBron didn't want to be considered a dunker. Didn't want to lose. I don't know. I mean, I'm surprised Nike never said, LeBron, look, we pay you a lot of money. We'll give you another $10 million to be in the dunk contest. Not now. I think at 38 years old, he probably wants to rest up. But back, 10 years ago, he would have been
Sure.
the guy, right? So, could you picture a dunk contest maybe 15 years ago with Kobe and LeBron? That would have been. I mean, we never saw them in the finals somehow. Never got to see LeBron and Kobe meet each other in the finals. Came close a few times, but it never happened. But maybe seeing those two all-time greats in a dunk contest would have been great, and we never got it.
Sap, would you do away with the dunk contest? What if they were able to bring stars back to it? Would you be okay with that, or you just think just bag it in general?
Yeah, I mean, bring Vince Carter back.
Well, I'm saying, like, okay, what if you got like some of these all-stars to do it? What if you got John Morant and Anthony Edwards involved in it? Is it worth it?
Oh, yeah.
So
Absolutely.
why can't they compel these guys to do it? What do you think it takes?
It's got to be money, right? Money talks. The sneaker companies would probably have to get involved, right, to underwrite it, or you just have winner take all $5 million.
Do you think they're scared of losing it, Sap, or you think it's just like we don't care about doing it?
I just hope not. I hope they're not scared of losing. I mean, I know the players are much more sensitive now than they were back in Jordan and Bird and even Kobe's days. Like, those guys were just, insane. They were all sociopaths to begin with. So, it's a different mentality. There's a few of those types of players in the league. I kind of think John Morant would be one guy that would be fun to watch in a dunk contest. Anthony Edwards. Those would probably be the two first guys I think of because, Ja's 6'2", has like a 42-inch vertical jump. And
it would be amazing.
Edwards is what, 6'4", 6'5". He's powerful. I'd love to see Zion in the thing, but the guy can't get healthy. And if I'm New Orleans, I'm like, you're not doing any of that stuff because you might blow out your knee. So, let's rule him out. Although he'd be the star of the show. It's unfortunate. I mean, heck, we saw Blake Griffin early in his career win the thing, and he was a big time star. So, if you had the stars in it, absolutely, that would be fascinating to watch. But when you have four guys, there's only four guys in the dunk contest. That's all they can find, and like no one knows who these people are.
Right. So I think there's a way to bring the dunk contest back to where people want to watch it and it's exciting. But that way is you have to compel the good players to do it. That people, if John Morant and Anthony Edwards were competing in a thing, people would be buzzing about it. People would be super excited about it. People are going to turn this thing off after the 3-point contest. I really think so. No one's going to care.
No, because we don't know who these people are. So when you don't know who it is, how can you get invested?
Yeah, I agree. So, I think that's something they should look at maybe in the next CBA SAP, which brings us to our last sort of topic of conversation is that the NBA and the Players Association are negotiating a new collective bargaining agreement. They've pushed back the deadline a couple of times, which isn't a bad thing. They just, want more time to negotiate it. Most people don't believe there's a potential of a work stoppage or anything like that. It seems like the league and the players are on pretty good terms. But a big thing that they're trying to figure out right now, perhaps the biggest thing, is how to deal with this load management situation that's really plagued the NBA for like about the past decade now, Sap. In that, players taking a lot of games off, missing games that are on national TV, missing games on the road where people are paying a lot of money to see star players and they don't show up for that game. So one scenario that's being talked about is one that we've talked about a lot before, Sap, which is tying postseason awards to percentage of games played. And I think that's a really smart idea. I don't know how the players are going to feel about it, but that's what the negotiations are at right now, Sap.
Yeah, the CBA expires after next season, and then after the following season is when the new TV deals will kick in. And from what we understand, the TV deals are going to be huge. 10 years, $75 billion. That comes to $7.5 billion a year, which comes to $250 million per team per year. That's like NFL TV money. That's incredible because they're also going to get some streaming services involved. You could buy games a la carte. If I'm a TV executive and I'm laying out a ton of money, I want to know that on a Thursday night at 10 o'clock when the Lakers are playing the Clippers, that we're not going to go and sit down and we're going to find out, early that day that LeBron, Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George are all out. And like the marquee matchup of the night is going to be what? Who? Like, Hachimura against Ty Lue as the head coach of the Clippers? Is that how we're going to push that game? To me, that's like consumer fraud, right? Especially
Yeah.
if I'm in LA, husband, wife, 2 kids, we scrounge our money together, and it's going to cost us $1,500 for 4 tickets. Maybe dinner before, parking, hot dogs at the game, beer, concessions, and we show up to the game, and LeBron, Anthony Davis, Kawhi, and Paul George aren't playing. That's consumer fraud. I want money back. I mean, look, we've been to concerts, right? I mean, you love the Rolling Stones. I love U2, Springsteen, whoever. I mean, if I have tickets to see U2 and I show up that night and Bono's not there, I'm going to be miffed, right? And again, this is what's happening with the NBA. So, as Mark Cuban has said many, many times, pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. The NBA's got a great thing going. That TV deal kicks in, the salary cap's going to skyrocket. Players are going to make more money than ever. But, let's be careful about being gluttonous when we go forward. And I think it's a great idea. And you've had this idea for years that the MVP balloting, first team, second team, third team, all NBA, which tie into contracts, more money for the players. You've got to have a minimum games played. Now, 60 to me is not enough. It's got to be more than that.
Not
It's got to
enough.
be maybe 68, which is like 85% of the games. I mean, again, I don't want to sound like the old guy. I think the league is better now than it's ever been. But Michael Jordan and Karl Malone, these guys never miss games. Like just look down Jordan's games played list. It was like 80, 81, 82. The guy played every game, back to back with hangovers, with the flu, whatever. Karl Malone was one of the most durable players ever. Kareem never missed games, and he was a big man. You just didn't see players miss games. Now it's when's the last time we sat down to watch an NBA game that both teams were fully loaded? I mean, the other night you had the Celtics playing Milwaukee. The Celtics decided to sit out 4 of the top 6 players.
Yeah,
And they
maybe
almost won the game.
opening night usually is the only
That's
time we
about
see it.
Yeah, and generally Kawhi's not ready for opening night.
No, not him.
Whatever. So that's frustrating. I mean, look, I'm a LeBron guy, that, but he broke the scoring record and then sat out the next 3 games. Like if I had paid a ton of money, I mean, the next home game was against Milwaukee, right? And okay, that's a marquee game. He's not there.
Except it's for the road games, especially, if you're paying you live in Oklahoma City and Boston comes once a year and Jason Tatum's not playing in that game and sits out that game, you're shelling out a lot of money for that ticket because, the tickets aren't all evenly, they don't say, okay, every game is $50, no matter who the opponent is. The Celtics, our ticket is going to be more expensive than seeing another team. That's just
it's
sort of the way it goes.
Pricing, right? They've done this in baseball for years. They're doing it in the NBA. Yeah. So the Golden State
opponent is what dictates the price of the ticket.
Especially if you're in Oklahoma City where the team isn't contending, although they've been a surprise this year. But yeah, I mean, if you have, you buy a 10-game season ticket package to the Thunder, you're going to try to find the 10 best games, the 10 best teams that come to town. It doesn't always work that way, but that's what kind of you're buying the tickets for, is to see the opposing team. That's when your team's not really relevant, although they've got Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is outstanding, and he's going to be in the All-Star game Sunday. He's a phenomenal player. But yeah, you're going to want to see the Warriors or the Lakers or the Celtics or Milwaukee or whoever. Yeah, again, it's consumer fraud. It really is, and the problem, Jet, and you can blame Greg Popovich for this because he started this, like you said, 10, 12 years ago with Duncan, Ginobili, Parker, to a lesser extent, Kawhi, till later in his career. It works. That's the thing. It works. San Antonio was the model franchise. Look at the Warriors last year. It was load management by accident, but Curry got hurt later in the season, missed like the final 5 or 6 weeks. When he came back for the playoffs, he was that much fresher. Draymond Green missed 5 or 6 weeks in the middle of the season. He was fresher in the postseason. We didn't see Klay Thompson until after Christmas. He had, pretty good legs in the postseason. Meanwhile, Jason Tatum, who played more minutes than anyone last year, was gassed by the finals. So load management, unfortunately, it works. So that's what teams are going to look at if they really want to win a championship. But you've got to make the regular season mean more than just like spring training in baseball, because you're still charging an incredible amount of money for tickets. And these TV networks are laying out billions of dollars. And again, on a Thursday night, they're promoting Clippers, Lakers, and, who's out there? D'Angelo Russell would be the best Laker if Anthony Davis and LeBron's out. And who's the best Clipper if you don't have Kawhi and Paul George out there? And that's
Yeah,
what you're trying to promote.
So I think the best way to do it, like you said, you got to tie it to the players' money, which is, awards based and all NBA team based and all-star appearances. We had Zion and Kyrie both made the all-star game as starters. Neither one of them deserved it based off of how many games they played. That's
Right.
crazy. So the NBA needs to fix that too. I know fans vote for the all-star game and stuff like that, but you can't make the all-star game, especially as a starter, if you've missed, a significant portion of the game. That's not right.
Or if you missed the 3 games leading up to the All-Star game. Like that's the only sport that does that.
I know.
Other sports in baseball, players will try to bow out of the All-Star game. So, they'll play the regular season and then all of a sudden, the Saturday or the Sunday before the All-Star game, they're like, oh, I've got a tweak in my knee, so I'm going to have to miss the All-Star game. The NBA is like they sit out 3 games before the All-Star break and then show up for the All-Star game. The All-Star game's huge in the NBA. It's the baseball still has the best All-Star game because it kind of is the closest to what the game is. Although, the Tampa Bay Rays kind of, with their occasionally have 7 pitchers pitch in a game, kind of like in an all-star game. That's how the game's played now, unfortunately. But it's the closest to the way the regular season game is played. Basketball, there's absolutely no defense played. And we do see the incredible skill level of these players. But you've got to do something where, you can't miss the 5 games leading up to the all-star game and then all of a sudden playing the all-star game. We saw Kyrie Irving do that here with the Celtics. We saw Kemba Walker do that here with the Celtics. And it's like, if you're ownership, you're like, let's get real here. But again, the owner's hands are tied and the players do run the league. But I also wonder, as some of these franchises get sold, Matasheba just spent $4 billion for the Phoenix Suns. Shows you how valuable the franchises are in the NBA, because there's probably 10 franchises more valuable than the Suns, right? Celtics, Warriors, Knicks, Lakers, go right on down the list, Clippers.
Bulls.
Bulls, still a huge, huge brand. If you put out $4 billion to buy a franchise, you're going to want to dictate what your players do. Like if I'm Matasheba, and the Suns aren't part of this, but Durant hasn't played, a month and a half? How ridiculous would that look if he shows up Sunday and plays after missing a month and a half? If I'm Matasheba, I'm going to say, well, you haven't played since we traded for you, but you're playing in the All-Star game. And again, I'm blaming someone for something they haven't done yet. But you get my point. So
I do.
It just looks ridiculous. I mean, it really does.
The other alternative, I think, and I think the NBA needs to do this, by the way, that tie it to postseason awards. 100% think that's the way they should do it. Maybe you look at adopting a similar system to what baseball does have, where you have an IR and you cannot get off the IR for a certain number of games.
Yep.
Because then teams can't get cute with, he's going to sit out this game with rest, but he's going to come back the next game, or these two and stuff like that. Say, okay, he's hurt. He's got to be on the IR for, 15 games. Teams aren't going to be willing to punt that many games, 15 days.
Yep.
They're not going to be willing to punt 4 games.
Yep. No, that's a great
player.
suggestion. Yeah, and this is going to have to be worked into the CBA. The players are going to push back. I know that, but there's going to be some point where the players are going to have to realize we've got it really good. Let's not screw this up by being gluttonous and greedy, because,
No, you're right. I was going to say the other thing they need to figure out too is you can't allow a loophole where LeBron checks in for a minute, checks out. That's a game played. Like
right. Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, it's tough. It's going to be a tricky negotiation because the players obviously really like what's going on right now, because they can kind of do whatever they want and rest when they feel like it. The league doesn't. But ultimately, it's one of the rare examples where the fans are on the side of the league, and supporting. They want players to play more games, and so I think that with that pressure, that ultimately the league will get what it wants, and the players, the load management stuff will be fixed a little bit. I don't think that there's 100% fix to it, but this should improve it if they're able to get it done.
One other thing too, Jet, and I mentioned them earlier for something else, but the sneaker companies can get involved too. Again, some of these players are making $20-30 million a year, tied into games played, right? I mean, if you all of a sudden play 46 games, you know what? We're going to give you whatever the percentages of 46 and 82. That's what we're going to pay you. That's what we're going to pay you, because, the rest of us have to show up to work. So,
Oh yeah, no,
if
Kawhi has New Balance over a barrel right now. He never plays. He's got
yeah,
that nice sneak. He's in the commercials more than he is on the court.
well, yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're making 20 million a year for your sneaker deal, that comes to $250,000 a game, right? So if you play 40 games, well, you don't get 20 million, you get 10 million. Sorry, because we're not getting exposure for you or from you because you're not there. Like, I mean,
Right. That's the whole
um,
point. Is people are
that's the whole
seeing you
point.
play in
Yeah,
sneakers.
yeah. I mean, what's he on unemployment? Is he collecting unemployment as well? From the state of California. Like, look, and I'm always pro player. I always am, but in this case, they've got to be careful because if this continues, they're gonna destroy the league, and now people are going to be completely turned off. Look, when the Chiefs play the Bengals next year in Week 14 or whatever it is, I will guarantee you, unless these guys are totally beat up and injured or whatever, we're going to see Joe Burrow against Patrick Mahomes, right? We're going to see that.
Yeah.
Um, I can't guarantee you that in the NBA. Like, I can't guarantee you next week that LeBron and Kevin Durant are going to face off each other when the Suns play the Lakers at some point, because that's going to be great. To see Durant with a new team, LeBron now the all-time leading scorer. That'd be must-see TV. Whether TNT or ESPN has that, they're going to want those two stars out there.
I'll call it right now. Next time that the Mavericks play the Nets, Kyrie will not play in that
Yep,
game.
you're so right.
Will not happen.
Yep. And to mention Kyrie, he's a vice president of the Players Association. That if like 20 people in the Players Association are on board with some new ways to deal with things, that Kyrie be the one guy who's going to push back and
Totally
screw this whole thing up. Yeah.
No, remember during SAP, during COVID, during the bubble,
Yep.
when he wasn't invited in because he was hurt and they didn't say why, we're not going to bring in more people. He wanted to break up the whole league. He said, let's just start our own thing.
And he still carries a lot of weight. I mean, he's
Jesus.
almost like, yeah, he really does. He's got like a spell over a lot of the players or most of the players in the league. I mean, he worries me with that. So, and he is not afraid to be a contrarian, and he can screw the whole thing up. They've got to be very careful with this. The commissioner is going to have to be involved and kind of put the sides together and say, look, we've got a great thing going here. Let's not F it up.
Absolutely. So that's something to keep a close eye on. And Sap, you and I will talk plenty about it as the negotiations continue. We get more news about what's going on, and hopefully as they, when they finalize the thing, and we don't have to worry about any sort of labor stoppage or anything. But we will be watching All-Star Weekend. We will be talking about it next week. Anything exciting that happens, probably not going to be happening in the dunk contest, but if it does, we will be talking about it. And thanks for listening, everybody. Make sure you can check out our social medias for all sorts of great stuff and show updates. Sap had a cool question out there today about the best birthday tandem, Tiger Woods and LeBron James, or Michael Jordan and Jim Brown. Is that right?
Yeah. Michael Jordan's birthday today turned 60. February 17th is Michael Jordan and Jim Brown, and December 30th is LeBron and Tiger Woods. And if you want to add a third guy to December 30th, Sandy Koufax, also December 30th. There you go.
30th. Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So check out at JohnSapp25, at Jet Stryer, and thanks to Full Press Coverage. We will talk to you guys later. See you, everybody.